Previously on America Divided.
Border Patrol's coming.
We have to classify them all together. They're coming here illegally, and we have to draw the line.
These are human beings. They are refugees fleeing terrible danger.
Is this a border?
This checkpoint is solely for immigration purposes.
We're on our way.
My mom gave me heroin.
How did your mom get into it?
Prescription pills.
So I want heroin right now. Where do I go out there?
Go out here and take a look.
Do you feel like Purdue is responsible ultimately for the heroin epidemic?
Absolutely. Purdue Pharma committed a gross act of negligence.
This disease is hollowing out suburban and small town America.
Welcome back to the show. Fans of not being able to go to the bathroom without your birth certificate scored a victory when North Carolina's governor signed HB 2.
New law that people must use bathrooms of the gender on their birth certificates.
Bathrooms. A lot of people are talking about bathrooms.
I signed that bill because if I didn't, the expectation of privacy of North Carolina citizens.
PayPal today canceled plans for a 400-job expansion.
Could lose roughly $2 billion in federal funds.
That violates the Federal Civil Rights Act.
I told you we weren't done with 2010.
Oh, hi. My name is Zach Galifianakis. You know, as an important celebrity, I've been called a lot of things in my life. Inspiration, genius, visionary, the guy with the beard from that movie. But the label for which I'm most proud is North Carolinian and genius. With so much love for North Carolina, I have to say these last few years have been confusing. North Carolina used to be all about basketball and barbecue, but now it seems like it's all about bathrooms. I thought talking about people using the bathroom was a job for comedians. Why are they so obsessed with bathrooms? Is all this shouting about bathrooms really about something bigger? So I call Ari Berman.
This picture.
Ari looks like your girlfriend's little brother, but he's been writing books and magazine stories about North Carolina for years.
What's up?
Well, I'm watching all this stuff that's going on in North Carolina, and it seems like the tensions and the energy keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Now there's this bathroom thing that's going on. I'm from there, you know, there were lefties, there were righties, but there was a balance back then. Why now does it seem like there's just a shift in one particular direction?
Well, in 2010, Republicans took control of the state for the first time since 1896. A ton of money was pumped into local races that really swung the outcome. And that was in many ways the untold story of the election. And we saw a dramatic shift to the right like we had never seen before in North Carolina history. The Democratic Party essentially collapsed in North Carolina. It's one-party rule, and so the only opposition to their policies is really in the streets. This was led by the North Carolina NAACP. Fact is, the NAACP is not just organizing in the biggest cities, they're organizing in very rural, very white parts of the state. They can say it hasn't always been this way. We're a state that invested in public education, in the environment, that cared about voting rights, and now we're moving backwards.
After my call with Ari Berman, I want to know why all of this is happening to my home state. All this stuff that I'm hearing about, is it all connected? And for me, this is not about Democrats or Republicans. This is coming more from a North Carolina point of view. It's kind of a Southern point of view. It feels like somehow that North Carolina lost its way.
a system that effectively sweeps millions of poor people into second-class status. Did we invest in those communities? No. Instead, we declared war.
What we have today is a wealth gap that is huge.
We are dying with untreatable water.
The working class have been hammered.
These are human beings. These are people. What can we do to get that point across?
The constant telling us that we're not doing enough is causing us to explode.
It is not, sir, a matter of opinion anymore. It is clearly exposed. It's clearly exposed.
What do we do? Stand up, fight back. They can only win by dividing America.
We know that the way things are working aren't working at all. That's right.
If you just keep pushing, if you just keep trying, if you refuse to let the nightmares have the last say, eventually the dawn will break, the sun will come out, and you will be in a brand new day. If there's no struggle, there can be no progress.
You started working in this area how many years ago?
At least 26, I'd say maybe 26 years.
There wasn't heroin here then?
No. But the only thing we had was domestic violence.
Right.
People get drunk and then they fight and that's it.
Right.
But when this heroin started, that's when we started getting the burglaries and the shootings and especially robberies.
When did you start to go like, oh, this is an epidemic?
I would say within the last year, we started getting a lot of overdose from heroin coming in. We were not prepared at all.
As I ride along with Officer Willie Hooper on his nightly patrol, he tells me that overdoses are transforming the work of the police. In the battle to save lives, the police rely on Narcan, an anti-overdose drug that can bring someone back from the brink of death. But as addicts overdose again and again, Narcan has done little to slow the epidemic.
139, go ahead.
You want to come out on the 30?
That's correct, we're on our way.
Do you feel like the number of ODs that you're seeing is going up?
It's definitely going up, 100%.
Yeah.
And the fatality rate is going up.
Right.
Bring your medic down the alley. They're going to move the cruisers out of the way. How much Narcan they give her? Just one dose. Gotta go to another overdose. I told you it's gonna be one of those nights. Hard.
What I'm learning about undocumented people in the Rio Grande Valley applies to them everywhere. They live life on a knife's edge. They know that millions have been deported, so they're insecure, vulnerable to exploitation, doing jobs no one else will. They make these sacrifices so that their children can have a better life. But I'm hearing that over the past few years in Texas, many families have been living in fear that even their American-born children, citizens of the United States, are at risk.
Hola, soy Alexa. Hola, Alexa, mucho gusto. Soy Esther. Hola, Esther. Gracias por hablar conmigo. So cute.
Y él no tiene su certificado.
No.
Y esto lo enseñaste allá para el certificado.
These women are telling me that in the past several years, across the state, the registrars who issue birth certificates stopped accepting the matricula consular, the kind of ID undocumented immigrants carry, even though Texas used to accept it and other states still do.
Y esto no lo acepta.
No, tampoco. Y esto es lo único que nos dan en el hospital.
Nor do the registrars accept the certificate of live birth.
Es como una
Esto
copia.
es del hospital donde él nació.
Sí.
Y ellos dicen que esto no es suficiente.
No. Trabas. Y hasta ahorita no sacó el de la niña. La niña tiene 4 años y ella no tiene su registro.
Wow.
Y tengo el niño ahorita de 1 año, 8 meses, y tampoco le sacó ese registro.
Pensamos qué va a ser el día de mañana que nuestros hijos crezcan y no tengan su registro, cómo le vamos a hacer para ponerlos en la escuela o para verificar si son nuestros hijos.
I'm finding this really upsetting. A birth certificate is so basic. It's your proof of existence, the thing you need to get all other ID. What's going on here? Is Texas trying to make the next generation stateless?
Entonces, ¿de dónde eres? Si nace aquí, en México no van a querer darle un acta de nacimiento tampoco porque no nacieron ahí. No consta que nacieron ahí.
Ellos no van a poder salir.
Si no la tienen, ¿cómo?
Pues en realidad, pues ¿verdad? Todos son ciudadanos los que han nacido aquí.
¿Y ellos cómo se sientan?
Pues a veces es triste y difícil porque pues mi niño abraza a los niños. Dice, tú vas a ir a la escuela igual que yo. Dice, aunque no tengas el papel. Es muy difícil porque a veces nosotros estamos a veces quizás en las sombras y no contamos lo que en realidad pasamos como indocumentados, como padres. A veces es difícil verlos y a veces se rompe el corazón al ver a los niños, al verlos así.
But the undocumented families are fighting back. They filed a lawsuit against the state for denying their babies the citizenship guaranteed under the 14th Amendment. Just like with those voter ID laws, Texas says it's trying to prevent fraud. But even the judge in the case calls this fraud an imaginary concern. Attorney Jennifer Harbury says it's all part of an anti-immigrant campaign. Just like the whole offensive notion that immigrants are having anchor babies so they can stay here.
How do you see this issue of anchor babies in relation to the Constitution and to the 14th Amendment?
Well, it's preposterous. And let me begin by saying, my father's family and my father himself are all immigrants. They also came here running from extinction, let us just say. So I'm an anchor baby then, right? But under the Constitution, the Due Process Clause, 14th Amendment, it says, anyone who is born in the United States is a citizen of the United States, period.
If Harbury's right, then how can the Texas policy stand? And will it?
I grew up around mountain people. and they're about as conservative as they come. So if the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People has chapters in these mountains, I want to see these folks for myself. Sure enough, this NAACP chapter is a little short on the C, unless you count the cake and coffee.
Well, I'll just grab a piece of this and we'll chat. All of it's free?
It's a donation.
Oh, donation. You know, there's always a donation box somewhere. They always try to get you. Well, thanks for having me.
They have as many reasons to be here as there are members. Voting rights, school cuts, Medicaid expansion, turning back of rights for women and gay people and African Americans. Really, though, they are all sitting at this table because for them it comes down to one thing, and that's the influence of money and how they think it's hijacked the state. But couldn't this just be the Appalachian version of hippies smoking pot, making love in hammocks, and complaining because the other side of North Carolina won for once? After the meeting, one of the members, Tracy Deaton, tells me that if that's what I think, then she has someone I need to meet, her father Leroy. Like most of the folks at the meeting, Tracy was born and raised Appalachian. And like most dangerous extremists, Tracy is a high school librarian. She joined the NAACP when the legislature targeted education for deep cuts, and education has always been one of the most treasured institutions in North Carolina.
My family has been in Mitchell County for, my kids make to ninth generation, huge advocates of public education. Both my parents taught school, my husband's parents taught school. So I became really involved and vocal with the attacks on public school. That was sort of my tipping point.
Any of the parents talk to you about this stuff and agree with you?
The parents I have spoken with are frustrated because the resources have been really cut as far as the bigger class sizes. They tried to do away with teachers' aides last year, and their salaries were frozen for 6 years. My family is deep in local politics. At the time when all this started happening in North Carolina, my dad was a commissioner. My brother was on the Board of Education. My mother was on city council.
Under what party?
They're all Republican. Yeah.
Hi.
Oh, Dad.
I understand that you and your family come from more of a Republican background.
Right. Certainly. People just choked when you said that.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
I changed my affiliation from Republican to unaffiliated.
Right. Walk us through when you came to the point where you're like, I cannot be associated with this group.
There were several things that played into it. They started pecking away at the educational system. And teachers became the whipping boy. Education became the whipping boy. The other thing was some of the health care issues. And it really became personal. I'll try not to get emotional. Tracy and Sam have a very autistic child. And the demands to meet his needs medically, socially, family, everything is just tremendous. And as an example, when he had to go to the dentist and he didn't understand that they're going to put a mask on your face or they're going to put a drill in your mouth or they're going to do this, he was uncontrollable, inconsolable. So they needed to put him to sleep. Well, the insurance wouldn't pay for it. And it was $750 or so to have him put to sleep. So they had to put this child in a straitjacket. Tracy had to get at his head and hold his shoulders and head, and Sam had to get to his feet and hold his feet.
Leroy tells me there was a bill proposed that would have made the insurance companies pay for the kind of care his grandson Zeke needed.
That sat on our senator's desk, his committee, for 3 years.
But what made you connect that dot, that the reason Zeke's not getting proper care is because of what's going on politically?
Politically, that they're taking care of Blue Cross and Blue Shield.
Well, that's who finances their campaigns. I mean, see where their campaign contributions came from, and you're going to see pharmaceuticals, and you're going to see insurance companies. They're all in bed together.
And we're talking to people that used to be Republicans.
Yeah.
You too.
Yeah, and still want to be a Republican.
So this argument that you're saying to me seems like common sense.
Does to me too.
To the three of us.
Yeah.
No matter if you're lefty, righty,
we're all humans.
We're all humans. That sounds more like the North Carolina where I grew up. But it seems like you can't take it for granted anymore that North Carolina is a place that educates its kids or takes care of its disabled. It feels like some kind of basic decency is missing from all this. The problem is, I'm still not any closer to really understanding why. Maybe I'm not smart enough to figure it out for myself, but I found someone who is.
It's been a couple of weeks since my trip to Dayton, but I'm still reeling from the experience. I learned so much about the origins of the addiction crisis, but now I want to know, why Dayton? I've read that 2 economists at Princeton University have come up with an intriguing insight into the crisis, which might hold the answer. A connection between the rising death toll and Middle America's economic decline. Professors Ann Case and her Nobel Prize-winning husband Angus Deaton have long studied inequality, poverty, and health.
So the mortality rates in middle age in all of the European countries and among Hispanics and blacks in America has been falling at about 2% a year. And that's been going on for 100 years. But in the late 1990s, among white non-Hispanics, the rate started to rise at about 0.5% a year. So the rest of the developed world continuing to fall, suddenly you see this wedge building between whites in America and all of the sister countries we might compare ourselves to.
When you had that moment of discovering that it was higher there, was that surprising?
You know, at that point, we almost fell off our chairs because this is not supposed to happen. We really thought we must have made a mistake.
So give me an idea of what the scale of this problem is.
From year 2000 to 2014, if the death rates had stayed at what they had been in 1999, about 200,000 people in middle age would not have died. And that's about equally split between men and women.
Cancer and heart disease continue to go down. So we think, okay, it must be traffic accidents that have gone up, or it must be murders that have gone up. They're still going down. And then there it was, and it's accidental overdoses.
Almost in lockstep, suicide and drug overdoses are going up in tandem. And cirrhosis and alcoholic liver disease have also risen really dramatically. When we put those together, we think of them as being all deaths of despair. Is it about the decline of working class jobs?
Right.
The working class have been hammered. With a high school degree, you used to be able to get a good job with benefits, with on-the-job training. A lot of those jobs went overseas, and they're not coming back.
Sandra, one of the moms I met, says she's gone to Edinburgh City Hall 4 times and still hasn't succeeded in getting a birth certificate for her baby. She's hoping things will be different if I come with her.
Hola. Buenos días.
Buenos días.
¿Listas?
Buenos días. Venía a sacar unos registros.
¿Registros para ti o
para los niños?
Necesito tu ID, por favor.
Ah, ok.
No. Se acepta la visa o la del elector y la licencia de manejo o pasaporte.
All things that, if you're undocumented, are impossible to get.
Correct.
So then parents who are undocumented but their children are born here in the U.S. can't get their kids' birth certificates?
Not as per our standards.
But isn't that enough to be considered an American citizen, that you were born in the United States?
I'm not denying that the baby's an American citizen. I'm not denying that at all. What I'm saying is, since she is the mother and she's not a U.S. born, then this is what we require from her.
And so her next option is what?
In a case like this, I can refer her and have her send all the documents that she's got to Austin, see if Austin will accept it.
Okay.
Is there anything that I can help you all with?
Yeah, actually, I'd love for you to clarify this document.
Es que ya había venido 4 veces, pero no me habían explicado que había esta opción.
Sí, no tiene opciones. Si ni necesita un photo ID, though.
Sí, tengo la ID del consulado. Es la ID del consulado mexicano. Es lo que tengo.
If you go through the state of Texas, yeah.
Then they will accept that ID and other forms of proof of residence.
Yes.
And when did they start handing out this form?
It's been years.
Well, she's been here 4 times, and she said no one has ever given her this form or explained it to her.
She probably didn't ask the right questions, and I don't know if she understood or not.
These are in English. Do you have the applications in Spanish? These applications are in English.
Let me see if we have it in Spanish.
Okay. Thank you.
La última vez que vine le dije que si había otra opción de que nos pudieran mandar a otro lugar.
¿Y qué te dijeron?
Y me dijeron, no, porque no tienen las IDs como que te están pidiendo. Fue lo que me dijo.
The state does not operate in Spanish, so it has to be translated.
Okay. That seems crazy, doesn't it?
State of Texas.
Attorneys for the families suing the state told me that parents have mailed in these exact documents and still have been denied birth certificates. Months later, Texas agreed to settle the birth certificate case and loosen up the ID requirements. Attorneys for the families believe they've won a victory, but say they really won't know for a while. The state has 9 months to comply with the agreement.
After my time in the mountains, I'm hoping Gene Nickel can help me get to the bottom of the changes I'm seeing in North Carolina. Nickel is a UNC law professor who has made speaking up for North Carolina's poor his mission in life. So, of course, the internet trolls say he's a fraud, and the legislature wanted him fired.
We have, in North Carolina, the fastest growing poverty rate in the country. And we have folks who took over the government 4 or 5 years ago, and they decided, looking at that, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to usher in the largest cut to unemployment compensation in American history. We kicked 100,000 people off of food stamps. We're going to kick 500,000 people off of Medicaid. And then studies out of Harvard indicate that that single decision means that every year, probably 1,000 people in North Carolina are going to die. The world is upside down in this theology.
It seems completely opposite the way it needs.
Well, that's my
view. It seems
view.
like common sense is gone.
I think it's fair to say that we have a government which is presently operating in bold contrast and opposition to the fundamental values of the people of North Carolina.
But not to get too political, because I'm just a serious journalist.
I know. That's right. Fat Jesus.
Yeah, some people know me from the Hangover. Those days are long gone. How do these people get in power? What is when we step back and look at these policies and we go, how were we fooled or tricked, or how does this happen? How does it happen?
Well, you know, part of it is money and politics. The relationship between money and politics drives our politics, makes political leaders and campaigns more congenial to those who have powerful economic interests. There's just a giant social study that's been released, finding once again that the interest of the bottom quarter of Americans has no impact, not a little impact, not underrated impact, has no impact on the outcomes of the legislative process in the United States Congress.
And Citizens United
Citizens United sort of blew the roof off. It said for the first time in American history that corporations can spend unlimited amounts of their treasuries on American political process. The dollars spent by large corporate interests in our politics, they're very wise investments. They pay heavily. In North Carolina, they typically want two things. One, they want tax breaks, but they probably weigh in even more heavily on the regulatory side. So they want to make sure that we don't have what they consider strangling regulation. So one of the ways that plays out in North Carolina is powerful economic interests trumping environmental concerns.
After listening to Case and Deaton, I feel compelled to return to Dayton. As I pass empty lots and boarded up buildings, I keep hearing Ann Case's words, deaths of despair. It's hard to reconcile what I'm seeing with what I've learned of the city's past, the Silicon Valley of its day. Dayton once claimed more patents per capita than any other U.S. city. It was a thriving middle-class community. But beginning in the 1970s, the kind of work that once made Middle America thrive began to disappear. Dayton held out longer than most, but in more recent decades, its industry and its population began to dwindle. Now the city and its workers have struggled to find an economic future.
We are excited to have you here to learn more about this great opportunity to be in on the ground floor with this growing, innovative global company.
Thank you. All right, how's everybody doing? Good? All right. So our facility is the world's largest facility for making automotive glass. It's right here in this area. After we hire you, you're going to be put on like a 90-day probation period. It's $12 an hour. Once you become a Fuyao employee, you automatically get $12.84. Plenty of opportunities, ladies and gentlemen. Plenty of opportunities.
Here's the railroad tracks. And nothing really has moved into this area.
No, other than Fuyao. This whole area was basically GM. I mean, at one point, just like city blocks upon city blocks.
How many jobs would you estimate that this supported at one point?
I'm sure well over 10,000 people. Smaller manufacturers, which there's quite a few around here too, that were like part suppliers.
Right.
So when the truck plant closed, they closed. And then because they closed, this place closed. And it's this domino effect that ripples out from the center from GM for miles and miles, frankly, and all of Dayton. The mechanic down to, a pizza place up the street. This whole area used to live or die basically by those plants.
Matt Clark is an organizer for the IUECWA, the union that represented workers at the storied GM Moraine truck and bus plant, and is now home to the Chinese auto glass manufacturer, Fuyao. This bar that we're in right now would normally be a pretty hop-in place.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you know, the first factory job I had was almost right after high school. I got hired in right next door here at Marine Assembly. And this place was crowded. It's changed drastically, you know. And by like 06, plants are closing. So now all of a sudden people can't pay their mortgage.
Right.
At the same time, you can't sell a house.
Right.
Because the housing market is crap.
Right.
So then you end up with all these foreclosures. Everyone starts bailing left and right. Now what you have is abandoned houses everywhere all through Dayton. And abandoned houses means, you know, an unfortunate element growing within that, drug use, and this influx of drugs, particularly heroin.
If I'm wanting to stay in Dayton to work, where am I looking to get one of those jobs that's like a job where I can have some kind of house and a family? And
I think that's increasingly difficult here. Obviously, the new employer that's moved into the old Marine Assembly plant is Fuyao. You know, I know quite a few people that are working in there. When I talk to those people, they say, this is nothing compared to what we had. And, you know, I'm making half of what I used to make.
Let's talk about the young people. You know, what are they looking forward to? What are their expectations? The 2.5 kids in the house and all that stability. It doesn't seem like that's out there.
It's not. They probably had parents that worked at those plants or other family members or grandparents, whatever the case may be, and they see what happened. I mean, let's be honest. If I'm an 18, 19-year-old kid in Dayton, if I was to drive over here and drive around here, it would not look like a bright and shining future for me. I think, unfortunately, there's a sense of despair and a nasty sense of anger. I think in terms of almost feeling betrayed in a way. And I think a lot of people in this country right now have a hard time placing that anger.
Right, but I see this generation really paying the price. A lot of them that we've met that are the ones that are dying of heroin overdoses.
I don't know how it gets better just yet.
I'd like to see something done about the illegal alien problem that would be so sensitive and so understanding about labor needs and human needs that problem wouldn't come up. As we have kind of made illegal some kinds of labor that I'd like to see legal, we're doing two things. We're creating a whole society of really honorable, decent, family-loving people that are in violation of the law, and secondly, we're exacerbating relations with Mexico.
Rather than making them or talking about putting up a fence, why don't we work out some recognition of our mutual problems, make it possible for them to come here legally with a work permit, and then while they're working and earning here, they pay taxes here. And when they want to go back, they can go back, and they can cross and open the border both ways.
Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr. didn't quite open the border, but as president, each did extend legal status to millions of undocumented immigrants living in the U.S. So how did we go from that to this?
Listen, we should enforce the law. How do we enforce the law? Yes, we should deport them. We should build a wall. We should triple the border patrol.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists. And some, I assume, are good people.
Criminals and rapists? I've seen multiple studies which indicate that violent crime among undocumented immigrants is actually lower than in the general population. I need to talk to someone who can explain the attitude shift. So I'm going to meet with Dan Stein, the head of a group called the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, a lobbying group based in Washington, D.C. They believe we're letting too many people in, both illegals and legals. Given where I've been, I decide to start with the babies.
You've used the term anchor babies. Can you tell me what you mean by that term?
It's an anchor. It's a grappling hook. It's an attachment. It's a foot in the door. And I don't understand why that's derogatory, by the way, but some people seem to feel it is, but it's descriptive of the fact that it provides a foot in the door. Do you think people come to this country and then have the babies so that they won't get kicked out? There are many, many reasons why people come to this country. Nobody comes to this country devoid of understanding or information about how U.S. law works. I recently saw a clip of the 1980 presidential debate between George Bush Sr. and Ronald Reagan, where they talked about immigration and spoke of undocumented immigrants in this country being good people, hardworking people, people that we should find more kindness and compassion. I mean, these are the words that came out of these two conservative heroes' mouths. What has changed so dramatically that between then and now? It isn't fair to attribute border anarchy to compassion. It's not a compassionate position to say that anybody can just run into the country and be expected to be treated like everybody else. The conversation around who these people are has gone from hardworking immigrants who are here to make a better life for themselves and for their children to something very, very different in this present day. First of all, 1980 was a very long time ago, and I'm here to tell you that the American people have been incredibly hospitable, generous, and open in going through some of the biggest demographic changes in any nation in the history of the world. And here we are today having a debate right now over whether or not the government even has the credibility to control our borders. Okay, so the reality is that at the moment there are 11 million or more undocumented immigrants living in this country. What is your wish for that 11 million population? What would you, if you had some of them could probably stay, some of them will have to go home. So are you saying they should be removed? Well, not all at once, but there's a process by which you encourage people to leave. Some people would be put in deportation proceedings, some people would go back home. Nothing about the law, nothing about Congress, nothing about the American people have ever said the way you immigrate here is to break the law and then wait around for the next amnesty program. It's not the law. I guess we're at an impasse where I see refugees and people struggling to make a better life for their children. Dan Stein sees lawbreakers, pure and simple. But could it be that cut and dry? I'm going to be meeting a young woman whose story I've heard is anything but straightforward.
We must.
In North Carolina these days, it's easy to forget in the middle of all of our political battles, we've been fighting an environmental battle too. When you take a closer look, though, you quickly understand that, like so much of what I've seen since I came home, it's hard to separate one from the other.
A spill in North Carolina, thousands of pounds of ash dumped into the Dan River.
One of the largest spills of coal ash ever reported in American history.
Officials estimate that as much as 82,000 tons of ash were released into the river.
And it's been spreading ever since.
So I didn't know what coal ash was either, but if you think about it, it's kind of simple. Coal ash is what is left after you burn coal. The stuff has been piling up for decades. They keep a lot of it in what are pretty much lakes of coal ash mud. In the big spill, one of these coal ash lakes dumped into the Dan River. The ash contains heavy metals and hexavalent chromium, the Aaron Brockovich chemical, and it's kind of radioactive. If it's in your groundwater, it is probably a pretty good recipe for cancer and heart and lung disease.
The coal ash belonged to North Carolina's Governor Pat McCrory's longtime former employer, Duke Energy.
His administration has, over the last year, been shielding his old company from lawsuits filed by local environmental groups.
So sorry about this, but here are some numbers that I learned about Duke and Governor McCrory. North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory worked for Duke for 29 years. The year before McCrory decided to run for governor, Duke gave the Republican organization that helps governors get elected $15,000. The year of the coal ash spill, they gave that same organization $3 million. And here are 4 more numbers. I'm sorry. Stay focused. After the spill that poisoned the Dan River, the state fined Duke, a $23 billion company, a little less than $100,000. That's like someone making $60,000 a year getting fined 30 cents. It seems to me like this $3 million, that was a pretty good investment.
When the Duke Energy Plant began its operations in the early 1970s, fly ash would fall on our land, rooftops of our homes and our vehicles, and cover them worse than the pollen in the springtime around here. We could write our names on the cars because it was just that thick. As a child, I had problems with my bladder. My mother developed heart problems that ended up causing her death on September 28th, 2014, of a massive heart attack. You can't drive 2 miles in either direction of the power plant without knowing a family that has dealt with such illnesses.
My father was a 32-year veteran of the Department of Environmental Quality. I started with the division in 2004. I was proud of my job, and I was proud of my agency. But I walked away from all of it in 2013 because I could no longer, in good conscience, stay with an agency that was being dismantled and redirected into a pro-corporation, polluter-friendly agency. DEQ press releases these days read more like a re-election ad than environmental position statement.
We are just tired of people dying, and that's not necessary. The people that are in position to make decisions to move things are not listening. So evidently there's something else involved that stimulate them, and that got to be money that is placed in their pockets.
I serve as Duke Energy's Environmental Affairs Director for North Carolina. This is a complicated issue, but we're focused on trying to get it right.
The people are tired of this being politicized. We are dying with undrinkable water that we won't help. We don't care about your re-election bids or none of that. We won't help because we're dying.
To see the heartache in my child's face because she knows I'm sick, that's heartbreaking for me. I don't want the next generation to have to face the same things that we're facing now. And that's why I'll continue to speak up for justice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had 3 strokes, and then I had a heart attack. I had to get stents put in my heart. These are the mounds of coal ash right here to my left, covered with grass.
That's all coal ash underneath that?
Yes.
Do you know most people on both sides of the roads?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
The Harrison's residence right here, their father had lung cancer. And there's a house right here, him and his wife both passed away from cancer. Now we're getting ready to approach Goolsby's trailer park. They received do not drink letters. This whole trailer park is contaminated water.
And what's the explanation behind it?
They want to say it's naturally occurring. That's what they want to say.
If they do know, then why? Then what is that? If they know and they don't care? Money? Greed?
The almighty dollar. It's the root of all evil. It's what it says in the Bible. And I do believe it because they'll do anything for it. This is where my mother, Annie, is laid to rest.
And as far as your mom's legacy and as far as your mom, what do you think she needs you to do?
Continue. I mean, I just can't give up.
It's that simple.
It's that simple.
Hi, cutie. Even though the birth certificate case has been settled, for now, I hear that there are many Americans who are struggling to prove their full citizenship. And I'm going to meet a woman in New York who says this happened to her. Claudia Palacios is an activist for immigrant rights and considers herself a radical, which you might find surprising because for years, Claudia was a United States Marine.
What did you do when you were a Marine?
I was a combat photographer.
Oh, wow.
So I would embed in different teams and just capture what was happening.
Where are you from originally?
My parents migrated to the state of Texas.
So you're first generation born in the U.S.?
I am, yes. I'm first born and first generation from indigenous Mexican migrants, yeah.
And were you born in a kind of traditional Texas hospital?
No, I was not. Due to fear of deportation, my mother chose not to give birth in a hospital. I was born through a midwife, and midwifery in Texas is very common.
Mm-hmm.
They're allowed to file certificates, and then those are presented to the state of Texas, and then you're supposed to get a vital record that says that you were born in U.S. territory.
Right.
You're granted a Social Security and all these other things, but what you're not granted is this birth certificate.
So when you signed up for the Marines, what documents did they ask you for?
This is actually the paper that I gave to my recruiter, and it's what was signed by the midwife. I mean,
this was enough.
This was enough, and I joined as a citizen.
As a citizen.
Not as a migrant, not as anything else. Okay. I am a citizen. When I joined the military, my mother and little sister decided that they were gonna migrate back to Mexico, and at that point, I was in Okinawa, Japan. I applied for a passport, and that was the first time I was denied. It was unreal. It was very unreal.
Claudia's story seems unreal to me too. But the more people I talk to, the more I see that there's a whole class of disenfranchised people living among us.
I thought it was a mistake, and I provided additional information that they wanted, and it was just rejection after rejection. It's been a struggle of almost 10 years now. There's paths for citizenship through naturalization, through the military, but I don't belong to any other state. So how could I start that process? So I'm basically stateless.
What does that mean for your life personally?
I haven't seen my mother and sister in years. Last time I saw them, I was still in the military. It was 2010, so it's going to be 6 years now. If I'm not viewed by the country as a citizen, where does that leave me? It's very scary.
Claudia's story is so strange and so sad. This is one version of a life without papers. You may find yourself stranded in your own country with no way to see your family. And Claudia also reminds me that there are so many people we hardly ever think about. They may be professionals or pick our food, or be a U.S. Marine. They may not have papers, but they're here, and they are part of our country too.
I'm told I will see some fresh approaches in one of the most unlikely places in the city. Called Twin Towers by the locals for the two towers reaching up from St. Mary's Church, the neighborhood was traditionally a tight-knit working-class neighborhood. It's now the epicenter of Dayton's drug epidemic. Here I find two exceptional women working to ensure the community's future. As part of her work at the East End Community Center, Emily Sirico takes a message of hope out into the community, telling anyone who will listen how to find treatment.
Specifically in East Dayton, we have had a lot of overdoses happening in the last few months. And so a team of us have been going out to respond, to try to capitalize on an opportunity with that individual to get them into treatment.
I'm Emily. I work with East End Community Services. Nice to meet you.
Ellen Mays walks the halls of Ruskin Elementary, where she runs an after-school program for Dayton's neediest children. Her goal is to help a new generation escape the clutches of addiction.
I want to welcome everybody to the third annual Miracle Maker Musical.
How long have you guys known each other?
Seventh grade?
Seventh grade, yeah.
That's really fantastic.
Yeah.
I've been in this exact area with a dealer, an addict, the police. How do you guys see this community?
I see a group of people that want to take their community back.
I spoke to Joe Hale, who's a lawyer who's been, fighting this crisis for a long time. And when I asked him what he felt like could be done, he said he didn't feel like there was a solution. What do you think?
There is a solution to it, and the solution is tackling poverty. Living in poverty is trauma. It's 100% trauma, especially with children. East End first started, and they went around to the community asking, what can we do for you? Mm-hmm. The family said, our children have no dreams. Mm-hmm. Give our children some dreams, or show them how to actually dream. The goal is to give them the opportunity to explore their talents, their passions, what's going to prevent those particular children from ending up in a cycle of drug abuse.
I think that in and of itself can just be huge.
We have to take an integrated approach to the problem. Nonprofits are coming to the table. The city's coming to the table. We have neighbors coming to the table. We have the hospitals, the sheriff's coalition, all these different groups coming together. We can tackle this.
Yeah.
Giving up is just not an option whatsoever. That we owe it to somehow figure out what we can do to make a difference in the lives of others.
You don't walk away from a situation. You do the most you can, and you bring your whole power pack with you to do that, because collectively we can do much more. It sounds like the gentleman you spoke to is feeling disheartened because he's lost a battle, a pretty big battle, but we might have fallen once or failed once, but you get back up and you try again until we find the solution. What's the alternative?
For now, the determination of people like Emily may be the only thing holding the line against the epidemic. On a cloudy spring afternoon, many of them gather for the opening of a new treatment center in the Twin Towers, looking for shared strength and their shared purpose. They'll need it. The cost of failure, of doing anything less, is only too clear.
Where you at, Joe? You got the name on these papers? I got the first name. What's your social? Say what? Just take.
Relax. Just like we ask addicts to do the hard work of recovery, we too must do the hard work to fight this plague. When I look at what we've accomplished through this sort of collaboration, I really do think everything is going to be okay.
Wakey. What's your name, partner? You overdosed on heroin. We gave you some Narcan, so just relax for a minute. It'll take a second for you to come back.
It's been a better part of the year getting to this grand opening. I thank you all for being here today, and I hope that this program and our efforts live up to all of our expectations.
Thank you. 1 milligram of epi. 2 milligrams of epi. I gave him 4 milligrams.
We've had 40 overdoses in the last 2 weeks right in this community. We've lost 1,000 bodies in the past 4 years. And we're still sitting around the table trying to figure out how to solve this problem. We gotta quit kicking the can down the road and blaming the feds and blaming the state. This isn't brain surgery.
How much heroin does he use?
I don't know.
How long was he in that room?
I had to be in there the whole time Miss with JoJo.
He's been in an hour.
Yeah.
And that's your son?
That's my son.
We are better than this. I'd like to say help's on the way, and maybe it will be, but don't lose faith. Stay strong.
Next time on America Divided.
People are getting elected through unconstitutional voting laws.
Why can we not oust the people that are in power?
They drew the redistricting map so that Republicans couldn't lose any kind of competitive election.
Aren't domestic workers protected? What do you say to a family that says, I can't afford overtime?
It is true that there's a limit to what families can afford and handle on their own.
You're saying if they can't afford me, they're not going to use me.
Well,
it's about money.